Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you a pumpkin pie that doesn't have any pumpkin in it at all. It's made with sweet potatoes and it's so good you won't be able to tell the difference. I'm also going to go through a few tips to help you turn your gas grill or your charcoal grill into an oven to free up some valuable oven time for the holidays. First thing we're going to do is take a couple of sweet potatoes wrapped up in aluminum foil and throw them on the grill. It's set for about 400 degrees and I promise you this is going to turn out better than the canned stuff.
The best place to do that is the warming rack of your barbecue, but if you're doing it in your oven, make sure you use a cookie sheet so that way the drips don't burn on the bottom of your oven.
The first tip is to make sure that your grill is clean. And when I say clean, I mean it's got to be really, really clean. The best way to do that is to crank up the heat so that way it burns all the old grease off, because you don't want your baked goods to taste like last night's chicken. That happened to me once, and I made some cookies that didn't turn out very well. So learn from my mistake and make sure it's clean. Now the second one is pretty easy. If you have a 3-burner grill, you want to make sure that you have the outside ones on, but the inside, you leave it off. That way when you put your food there, the heat goes around it, everything cooks evenly, and you don't have to worry about it burning on the bottom. Now one thing that people ask me is, what if you only have a 2-burner grill? And you could do something similar where you have, just pronounce these two, one on and the other one off. The only issue is you have to rotate a bunch in order to be able to keep it cooking even. Now another tip that you could use is if you go ahead and make a trivet just like the one that I made from our Weber Q. I'm going to put that right up here. And basically what that does is it deflects the heat so that way it doesn't burn on the bottom. If you don't want to sacrifice a cookie sheet, you could always use some aluminum foil, poke some holes in it. But the important thing is that you put the cookie rack on top and that elevates it off that hot surface. Okay, so it's been about an hour. It's time to take them off because they're both soft and ready to go. The next step is to let these cool. We're going to peel them, mash them, and we need about 2 cups worth for the pie. Now there are at least going to be a few of you that are going to say, I don't have a 2-burner grill and I don't have a 3-burner grill. I've got a charcoal grill. I've got a few tips for you there as well. The first one is a lot of these foods that you're going to want to bake may not taste very good if you add a little bit of smoke flavor. A lot of things benefit from it, but some things don't, especially sweet food. So if you wait until your coals burn down a little bit and you have just clear, not even white smoke, not dark smoke, but almost to the point where you have no smoke, you're a lot likely to have less of that flavor go in there. Some of that smoke flavor is going to be unavoidable, and so if you have something that you can wrap up, like if you're doing potatoes or stuffing, things that are supposed to be covered in aluminum foil, that flavor won't get through the aluminum foil and you'll end up just baking it like you normally would, which turns out absolutely awesome.
Next, we make some pumpkin pie filling, and I use the liquid ingredients first because it blends easier, so I throw in the evaporated milk, egg yolks, brown sugar, a stick of butter, and a bunch of different spices, none of which is pumpkin pie spice. Then we add the sweet potatoes that we cooked earlier that are mashed and peeled. The final step is to blend it up until it's smooth and evenly combined. You could do this with a whisk or even a hand mixer if that's what you have, but I prefer to do it in the blender. The next step is to make a meringue using egg whites and sugar. We're going to whip it up using a hand mixer until we get to hard peaks. So the way you start it off is you start whipping it up, and once you get a few air bubbles in there, it starts to get a little bit foamy, then it's time to go ahead and add the sugar. You want to add a little bit at a time instead of all at once so you can get in there evenly. Now after what seems like forever, you're going to notice that it starts to get pretty thick, and you're going to know you've got hard peaks when you pull the beaters out and the peak sticks straight out without bending. The next step is to mix the pumpkin pie filling with the meringue that we just made, and you want to do this very carefully so that way you don't pop the air bubbles that you just spent so much time creating. You're going to fold it over rather than mix it, and keep going until it's a consistent color and fully combined. Then the next step is to throw it in a 9-inch pie tin. I'm using a prepared one, but homemade turns out a lot better. After that, the only step that you need to do is to make sure it's smooth so that way it doesn't burn. Preheat the barbecue to 400 degrees before you put your pie in. And this has worked pretty well for me, about as good as putting it in the oven, even though the temperature gauge may not be 100% accurate. Then after 10 minutes, you're going to turn it down to 350 degrees for half an hour. And it's a good idea to rotate the pie halfway through so that way it cooks evenly. You'll know it's done when you can put a knife in it and it comes out clean. Now after we set it aside and let it cool for an hour or so, it's time to slice it up. Now I'm going to get a big old piece just for me. Now most people would take this and they'd have some whipped cream with it, but I prefer doing a little bit of ice cream, and not just 1 scoop, but I think 2 is best. Then when the holiday comes around, you can do more than just cooking the turkey or the ham. You can make some pie along with it and save some other people some time in the kitchen.